Good evening and welcome to Inside Government, a show brought to you by Cayuga Community College and shown on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, as well as ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. City Hall in the city of Auburn is in a bit of transition, but not in a bad way. The City Manager Jeff Dygert has decided that he is going to retire this year, and he gave the city well enough notice on this. And the city started its search and then didn't have to go very far, well, literally just down the hall, by asking Jennifer Haines, the Director of Planning and Economic Development, to fill in or to come aboard as Assistant City Manager and then take over as City Manager this summer. We've asked them both in to talk about the transition, a couple of other projects that are going on, talk a little bit about road work where the city is on its budget. Also, we'll talk about Hoops Park and a new exciting program that is going on between Dunning Avenue and Bluefield Manor. Welcome back, both of you. Congratulations again on your news. I have seen you several times in private, but congratulations on your new job.
Thank you.
So how is the transition going so far?
As smooth as we would have expected.
So what is going on at this particular stage for both of you?
Well, I'm doing a lot of learning.
Okay.
Drinking from the fire hose, literally. I've been in.
Oh, you're getting this firefighter in there.
Yeah, I had to say that.
Okay.
I've been in the organization for a long time and have had a good general knowledge of what's going on, but I appreciate Jeff and the council giving this opportunity to transition in this way so that I can dive a little bit deeper into the details. I'm finding that I have more questions than answers lately. So Jeff's given me a good look into different departments and responsibilities that are coming.
So with this transition, and this is most likely the first time in 60 years, at least in modern memory, of a city manager setup where we've not had a transition. Everyone has either left because they've taken another job, they may have been let go from their job, or they just retired. In this particular case, there is a transition for the first time. So does that mean that everything you do, she signs off on, or everything she does, you sign off on, or vice versa?
No, we're just kind of going about business as usual, and Jenny's kind of just in the mix on practically all of the conversations at this point. I would say we're probably involved, because of how involved we were with the planning department, involved probably in 70 to 80% of the conversations prior to that anyway, or at least in the know about what went on. So I don't really think I don't feel like it's a huge lift for staff or for the city, and I don't think it's a huge lift for Jenny to do this, really. It just seemed to be a natural progression of things.
So before getting to her, let's just some basics for you.
Sure.
When are you finished at the city?
My contract is through June 30th,
Okay.
is the way my contract was written.
Will you leave before that? Will you stay longer?
I am, I guess this is the official announcement of that then. I am going to leave slightly sooner than that, and approximately the May 30th.
So will that be before the city adopts the budget or after?
That will be just prior to.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with that. My timeline has nothing to do with any particular city timeline.
Are you going to be doing anything fun?
I don't know. I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Do you have another job lined up?
I do not.
You do not?
I do not.
So you're concentrating for these next, what would be 60 days. We're at about 60 days for the transition right now,
Yep.
a little over that.
Yes.
So a little bit about you. You've been on this show half a dozen times over the years, but people may know you only in the isolation of economic development. So how long have you been with the city?
I've been with the city about 31 and a half years.
And how did you start?
I actually started as an intern before I graduated college in the planning office, and just sort of started coming back over breaks. And when I graduated from college, V.J. Mattel, who was the director at the time, said, "Why don't you start here till you find something else?" So.
And you never left?
Never left.
So in that, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the town of Sterling in
Okay.
northern Cayuga County and went to Red Creek Central School.
And then college?
College, I went to Houghton College for my undergraduate and Syracuse University for my master's.
Played soccer at Houghton?
Yes.
And And so you went to the planning office. What positions did you have there?
I actually started as VJ's assistant and moved to planning assistant, community development planner, senior planner, planning and economic development program manager, and then director.
So this position has come up several times, because how long were you with the city, or have you been with the city?
I'm in my 31st year right now.
31st, so roughly around the same time.
Yes.
But it's come up a couple times, and I know you did not have an interest in previous, or at least publicly you had not had an interest in the position before. What changed now?
So I think there's, we know there are a lot of opportunities in the region for communities. We can talk about Micron, we can talk about our own businesses, which is what we're concentrating on, and all the different things that they're doing. There's a lot of opportunity for development right now, and the council is very much interested in that, and so we sort of cooperatively had some conversations around that. So definitely am interested in leading the city into those opportunities. We already are working on that, as well as keeping good track of our finances and being good stewards. So just overall interested in putting my brain on the organization as a whole.
So you and your husband Howard live here in the city?
Yes.
And do you have children?
Yes, I have 2 sons, Buck and Alex, both married, and Alex has 3 children, so
Okay.
3
And what are
grandchildren.
their ages?
19 months and twin boys 3 months.
Okay. So you get to be a busy grandmother in between.
Yes.
It's very hard for me to say that about you. But so with you taking the position, that has created somewhat of a domino situation in your old office. So you have made changes to economic development planning. You have a new planning director, correct?
Yes, so Stephen Selvik is the new Director of Planning and Economic Development, and I will say that that shouldn't be much of a surprise, as we've been very diligent about succession planning in the office, and actually had a couple of great candidates that could have very well taken it. But Steve has been the Deputy Director for the office for several years.
And he's been with the city for about 2 decades?
Yes, almost 20 years.
Okay. And are you still keeping economic development in your portfolio for now?
For now, yes. So we are in transition in our community right now, as you know, related to economic development with the closure of CETA. So we're in conversations with our partners at Cayuga County, and there are a few of us that are around the table every couple of weeks to make sure we're providing good service to our businesses, making sure we're represented in the region, because there's a lot of discussion right now and a lot of partnership there. So we'll make sure that we're well represented. And
So will that be in your portfolio for the near term, the long term, or you don't have an idea right now?
near term for sure. We definitely want to make sure that economic development is well covered. At the city we're in conversations about how to do that, in conversations with the county, but we will make sure it happens well.
So you mentioned CETA. I wasn't going to go there, but we're down that path already. So it's been almost a year now
Yes.
since CETA kind of lost its funding. There was going to be reorganization. The county was going to come up with a plan back in the fall. Some things have gone this way, some things have gone that way. Do we have a united economic development plan right now for Auburn and Cayuga County?
What I'll say is that we're working on it. Jonathan Anna, the new chair of the legislature, has been very straightforward about his interest in economic development and wanting to focus on that. Mayor Giannatino remains focused on economic development. So we will continue our conversations, but I will say we are on the same page. We want to make sure that good service to our businesses and our residents happens.
So you have been through this slog before. And so maybe about 17 years ago, the effort was to create this one-stop where we had all these great tools. Everybody had great tools. The county had their things, the city had their things, but try to bring all the tools into one toolbox. Are we close to that again?
I'll say that there's still value to the model, but there needs to be more conversation. We have different agencies that are doing great work, and we need to determine whether that one-stop model is where we're going. Again, I think there's value to it. The region looks to one-stops typically when they're looking at different counties, and that's true for some of our partner counties in the region, is there are one-stop agencies. So is that what we end up with ultimately in the future? That remains to be seen, but I believe that that is still the interest at the moment.
You're obviously putting a budget together right now. You and Mary Beth Leeson, the comptroller, will be on next month to talk about it. But at this stage, are you earmarking any specific funds for economic development beyond what the city currently does? Because I know there was a demand back in the fall that you all should pony up some more money.
We would really like to do that. We're going to have to see how the budget shakes out as we go along, and we cover all of the normal basis that we have to cover. So there is still a desire to do more with economic development, because it feels like in this current moment that we're in, that there is more going on in economic development, more commercial interest, more industrial interest, more housing interest than we've seen in quite a while. We don't want to miss out on that.
So you're about 8 months into your fiscal year. You've just completed 8 months. Where are you on the expense side at this stage?
I have no detail on that,
Okay.
but we do. We look at things typically on just about a monthly basis. We're in good shape. Our department heads do a good job, keeping within budget. We've advised our department heads to tighten things up a little bit more going into this, because we understand that going into this next budget process, there have been some significant changes in things like health insurance and things like that that are going to have a pretty big effect on
How are you
us.
doing on the revenue side? Specifically, I would say sales tax. I know the
That's been pretty good. We tried to have realistic expectations going into the budget last year, and the last I saw, we're in pretty good shape with that. We had a period of time for a few years where we were really outperforming even expectations. That's leveled off a little bit. But there's some new things coming on board, like, it may not be everybody's thing, but we have 2 of the legal cannabis shops opening in the city, when we have no idea at this point what the impact of that's going to be on sales tax. We anticipate that that'll drive some sales tax.
because you will get a portion of their sales, correct?
Right, but
Okay.
right now the state has not released any information as far as what the anticipated impact of that has been, or could be, or what it has been in other municipalities that have been doing that for a year or so.
Will you know next month when you will start getting? I mean, they've just literally is Flintstones. That's the one.
I don't think that's not even open
That's
yet.
not open, but
Right.
Wildflower down in the Nolans block is open.
Right.
But it's usually going to be
It's
a
probably gonna
quarter
take-
or 2 behind before you start getting money,
Yeah,
correct?
I would suspect it's probably going to be about 6 months before we see anything of it, and it's going to take a while before we can accurately predict what that's going to trend like.
Do you know if they're doing well?
That I don't know. They've just recently opened. I personally haven't had any discussions with the business owners yet to see how things are going, what their expectations were.
So one of the general concerns was the idea that there might be an uptick in police activity and other things of that nature. Has that come about?
No, we've had, that I'm aware of, we've had no complaints. I don't see people, gathering, and a lot of the things that were concerns from folks in the community or in the neighborhood that I'm aware of haven't played out. It's been a relatively quiet business.
So I want to talk about 3 projects that are in differing stages. Let's talk about the one that's the farthest out, and that's the Dunning Ave project. That's between Dunning Ave and Bluefield Manor. I know you have been taking the lead on this with the city. What is being proposed? So this is the very southwest corner of the city of Auburn. It's a green space for the most part right now.
Yes, the city of Auburn owns 38 acres adjacent to Bluefield Manor. In fact, the city had sold that property to Bluefield Manor at the time that it was developed. So that left 38 acres, which we have always contemplated housing development there. A couple years ago, Jeff and I met Park Grove Realty, who are the developers of the Cancer Center. And as we looked into them,
They just opened up at Auburn Community Hospital.
Yes.
Okay.
So we realized that they did market rate housing, and we've tried to figure out how we can get somebody interested in market rate housing. Are we a market for that? So we started talking to them about it. They looked at sites, and ultimately we landed on this particular site. One of the things that we have struggled with is funding for market rate projects. There's a lot of different kinds of funding at the federal and state level for affordable housing projects, but market rate is tough. So Cayuga County learned of a county infrastructure grant program that was released in November of last year. And we have had a housing committee together for a couple of years. We formed around Micron and how to prepare for
There are
opportunities.
several committees, one on
related to that.
transportation, childcare, housing, things of that nature, correct?
Yes. So we had continued meeting, and the county planning and a couple legislators had come to say, hey, you know, what do we think? Do we have shovel-ready projects for this funding? And this one came up again because we've been trying to get some traction. So we appreciate their partnership. Just a couple weeks ago, they voted to submit this for that particular grant program, $1 million towards infrastructure for the project. It's a $23 million project, 70 units of market rate housing. It'll end up being 7 buildings of 10 units each, townhome style houses for rent.
So let's take this in little chunks here. First of all, this is separate from the discussion that the zoning board had about a month ago about a different project on Dunning Ave, which is going up between Arlington and
Yes.
Dunning Ave, which is a strip mall and housing.
Yes, this is a separate project.
And that project was defeated, and is that moved forward at all?
That has not moved forward
Okay.
since the meeting.
So this one, this is city land, so does that mean, is the city contributing anything to this project right now?
So after this county vote, that really sort of kicks off a development process where we'll need to negotiate a land sale. They'll need to start working through their site plan process.
So your plan is not to donate the land?
No.
Okay. So the state will come up with some money for this, the developer will come up with some, and then they'll look for grants and other things for that?
It's my understanding that they're looking for this $1 million from the county infrastructure grant program, and then the $22 million they will secure.
But at this particular stage, there's no plans for the city to contribute any money?
No.
Application to the county's application, you said before the show, is due April 1st.
Yes.
Any idea when you would see, if everything goes successful and all the boxes are checked, it still has to go through planning and zoning process, am I correct on that?
Yes.
Because of the land that's there. When could you see shovels in the ground? And more importantly, how long do you think it would take to build something like that?
That's a good question. I would hope that we could see shovels in the ground by this time next year. It will take a few months to go through the development process. And the grant, obviously, we would hear about before then. But I would hope we could be in the ground in a year and then open in another year. So
it's not in stages, it would be most likely all
Yes.
7 buildings all at
Yes.
once. Is this an offshoot, from your perspective, because you've been having these Micron meetings, is this an offshoot of the Micron discussion? Or is this separate altogether?
Well, what I'll say is we have for a long time been interested in housing development. We have developers of different kinds of housing that have approached the city over the years, and we've always felt like we needed better information for the council to make decisions. We've talked about a housing market study. We still want to make sure that happens countywide so that we can have good information to drive development to the right areas of the city and the right areas of the county. So I guess what I'll say is the Micron discussion was a catalyst for to pull more people around the table for conversations that have been happening for many years already. So there's always been interest in housing development. We want to make sure it's done the right way, that we don't overbuild any specific sort of housing. The studies that have happened in Onondaga County and Syracuse, the conclusion is we need all kinds of housing. but we really want to make sure that it gets driven to the right places in the city and the county. So
I thought I saw in one of the news articles that originally one of the lands in discussion was not the Bluefield, but it was the Seward, what I'll call the corner of
Yes.
Seward, where Seward School is, where Metcalf and South Street. Was that a property that was in discussion for a variety of
Yes.
housing projects?
it was in discussion. The developer, as they reviewed different vacant parcels around the city, identified that one as their top choice because of its location. So they were very interested in it because of its proximity to downtown, to the school, to their other project in Ithaca. As we had we had initial conversations with the school district about it, and the more recent ones, there was a decision that they wanted to hold the property. So then,
do they have, I will ask this of her next month, but does the school district have a plan for that?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So on Micron for just a moment, because some of us listened to the President of the United States 2 Tuesdays ago, and the CHIPS Act came up, and obviously he would like to have it repealed. But even before that, there was conversations about him pulling back from the Biden administration's commitment on the CHIP Act. Do you have any concerns, either as the city or economic development at this stage, about that money disappearing?
I guess what I'll say is we have enough demand for housing from our own businesses and recruiting employees that I believe will have demand here regardless.
I'm sorry, I'm moving on past housing. I'm just talking about Micron itself. Do you know, if we hear one more person say it's equivalent to the Erie Canal for the 21st century, is that still a worry that I know the county executive in Onondaga County says he does not have any concerns. They're moving forward, environmental reviews. He also can count votes. Something you do all the time. You got to get to 3, right? 3 or 4 sometimes. Do you have worries that money might disappear and then there's nothing?
I feel like our businesses have enough going on here that we will have enough economic drivers that if Micron comes, that would be fantastic and that would be excellent. But I think we have enough going on in Cayuga County that we will be fine.
And you're still having those committee meetings where you deal with housing, transportation, childcare. Are they obviously in the case of housing, it has produced something. How about the others? Are you making headway? Are there any tangible plans from those?
So there are a couple of committees that have continued to meet regularly, housing and workforce development. And I believe both of those committees have made some headway. Their chairman, Anna, is reorganizing and refreshing those committees, so we'll see some more activity, I believe, out of them. But I believe that the 2 committees that have continued to meet have made good headway.
So just about half a mile from here at Hoops Park, there is a lot of vehicles and mud and muck, which you talked about more than a year ago.
Right.
So for those who may not know what's going on, what are you doing at Hoops Park?
So Hoops Park over the years has become shallower and shallower as sediment has accumulated there to a point where it's difficult to keep it clean and pristine in the summertime. So we've got a project we're working with the Cayuga County Soil and Water Authority is in there helping us maintain that, dredge it, repair some of the broken seawall, I guess you'd call it.
Were you having leakage issues?
Not so much that, just, there's some cosmetic aspect to it, and the other thing is we just want to define that, the perimeter of the pond, and again, clean it out so that we can maintain the quality of the water in there.
Any idea how many trucks full of muck you've taken out?
I don't know. That would be an intro. I will get you that information so you can...
So where are they in the process?
The process was slated to take 3 to 4 weeks. As you know, we had a really tough winter. So
really? We'll get to that in a second.
The cold created some problems with that, and then some of the thawing and the amount of precipitation and snowfall that we've had has created some other issues. It is, there's no nice way to put it. It's a mess. but it's one of those processes
But you're doing
that's
it in
going
a
to be
period
less.
of time where you're not going to be impacting any of your summer events
And that
or spring
was
events.
that was the intent, is to try to do it in an off season so that by the time we're done, we can get the lawns reestablished, and so that it's available for the summertime events. And
When do you see it, even with the bad weather we've had, though you wouldn't know it today?
right.
Right. When do you think you'll have this
Well,
completed?
hopefully the tough part of the work, or the really dirty part of the work, is over in the next week or two if the weather maintains for us, and then we'll still have the wall repair and then the reestablish the lawn and things
Any
like
idea
that.
how much this is costing?
We had a grant for, I believe it was $150,000 through New York State, so this has mostly been there. And when we have these partnerships with the watershed group, they normally are able to do in-kind services with us, and it's really a benefit to the taxpayers.
So do you see any city money going into this?
We may have a little bit of minor funding going into it, but we haven't bonded for anything. There's not a huge budget for this. It would just be some miscellaneous stuff out of the Hoops Park budget.
So you mentioned winter. Some of the roads are looking frayed. They have not looked in some time, but it's been an awful winter, freezing, heavy snows. Where are you on with your staff of looking at what the road program for 2025 will look like?
So normally that road program is almost a 12-month program. Not only the repair, but the assessment of the roads. So that happens kind of year-round. Actually, in the fall, our engineering department normally has a pretty good idea on what they're going to focus on in the spring. This year, because it's been, I don't know whether it was unusual. I guess the last few years have been the unusual ones, and this was a normal year, so it feels worse. So they've been going out, reassessing the roads, because there definitely has been a lot of damage done by the freeze-thaw cycle
So
this
let's
year.
take out the state roads for a second. For
Yep.
what you normally do is, if I remember my numbers correctly, and please feel free to correct me, it's somewhere, the road program is sometimes between $500,000 and $700,000.
We've been fortunate enough to be able to put a significant amount more in the last few years. New York State has upped the ante here over the last couple of years, and we can look in the area of around $2 million at times, the total into the road program. Over the last 3 years, that's had a significant impact, right? When you're the one that hits the pothole, normally you're probably thinking that, these roads, but really on our end, the number of complaints we've received in the last few years has gone down dramatically, and it's spiking again right now.
And arterial is a whole different issue, and North and South Street, you're hoping that the state gives you more money. They haven't raised your reimbursement rate for
Right,
some
so we
time.
know the arterial maintenance money has not changed since, I think it was 1987, give or take. So what we get reimbursed
Before
by
you were
the
both
state-
with the city.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so what we get reimbursed to maintain the arterial has not changed since 1987. I believe one or two of the costs have probably gone up 1 or 2% in that time. That's problematic, but the arterial is slated for reconstruction. It was slated for this year. It's been delayed. It will happen in 2026 is what we're told. North Street is another state highway that definitely needs some work. Originally it was in a plan. It has been on a schedule. It's been removed from that schedule. We fight constantly with the state to try to get that reestablished as a project for them. At this point in time, even if it does get established as a project, it's probably a few years out.
You'll have to invite him back for ribbon cuttings when you get all these
Absolutely.
projects
That's right. He's gonna be
done
back
that he
for a few.
started. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you both. 30 minutes. We didn't get to Lake Avenue Bridge. We didn't talk about the new police chief. We'll talk about those at some other point. But our guests have been the city manager, Jeff Dygert, who has regularly come on the show to give us a city update. And his successor is here, Jennifer Haines, who is the assistant city manager. We want to thank you both. You'll be back here in a month to talk about the budget with Comptroller Mary Beth Leeson, and we look forward to having city manager updates from you in the future as well.
Thank you. I look forward to it
So
too.
we look forward to that. We had hoped to give you an update on the YMCA right after this. Unfortunately, one of our guests is not able to join us. We're going to reschedule that. And so we'll give you more details on that in the coming weeks. This is we're just ahead of spring break here at the college, so this is our last of our public affairs shows for this week. We'll return on Tuesday, March 27th. We have a number of guests that will be on, including Liz Smith of Unity House, who's retiring, as well as John Lamondas, the Assemblyman, and Mayor Genentino will be here. Misty Selvik will be here, the head of the school district, with Tessa Crawford, their business manager, to talk about the school budget as well. If you'd like to send us your ideas for guests or questions, you can send them to cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. We hope you have a good evening, enjoy your week, and we will see you back here on the 27th.